Hello, Salt Strong Nation. Joe Simons, like diamonds. We're back. You might be watching us on the YouTube. You might be listening to us on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, the other 1,000 places this podcast miraculously shows up. I don't even know how it works. Mind-boggling. Kind of like what we're going to talk about today, Pastor Johnny. How does all this Christianity, this God stuff work? And real quick before I introduce Johnny, if this is your first time listening to a Salt Strong Unchurched episode, this is the third episode. And this was something that I've been really just felt like I've been called to do. Not because I'm the experts, because I have a lot of these same questions that you probably do. And I've had some of the same struggles with church being boring, which we talked about in the last episode. Pastor Johnny's getting a little bit antsy already. I'll talk about church being boring. and just some of the questions about faith. And if you know my backstory, I grew up in a very religious family. And when I went to college, it was kind of my, because I had done all that, it was kind of my excuse to not have to do it anymore. All of a sudden, grew up in Florida. I'm in Atlanta, Georgia, no parents, no parental advisory. And I stopped going to church. And a decade passes pretty much, and I hadn't really gone to church at all unless I went home to see my parents. And those were also some of the loneliest times of my life. That was when I got cancer, which is a whole nother story. And that was when I started asking a lot of questions. And then I asked a lot of people to pray over me. It's a shame that bad things have to happen, right? Like cancer or deaths in the family, for you to start asking a lot of questions, and you to start, kind of wanting to get a little bit closer to God and to people who will pray over you, into a community. And long story short, that's why I want to do this. And I want to have different pastors on. Pastor Johnny has done the first 3 now. Who knows how long this series will go along? As long as you guys keep giving us awesome feedback and really good questions, we'll keep doing them. And this is a really hot topic, and it's one that I've even dealt with personally, and even in my own household, because I've married a beautifully smart, crazy smart scientist, essentially a doctor who has spent the majority of her 20s and 30s studying science. Mm-hmm. And the big question is, science versus God and science versus Christianity. And this is tough, and evolution and Big Bang Theory and all this stuff that I think a lot of us struggle with. So we're going to do our best to cover this. So Pastor Johnny Kelly.
Yeah.
Welcome back, bro.
It's good to be back. Johnny Kelly, like jelly. I don't know. I can't.
It doesn't have it.
I don't know. Like smelly. I don't know. It's good to be back. It really is. It's great. I enjoy it. And so excited to talk about a topic like this today, because it's definitely one that I think Christians struggle with. People that are looking at the idea of God. This is almost always the first hurdle they have to get over in their brain to make that jump, or that idea of, hey, I'm going to try this thing.
And why? Is it just, it's because as people, we want answers, like we want concrete answers?
Yeah. I think it is because we want answers, but we as people are pretty content to not have the answers. If you think, like even something as simple as like the tides, I know it has something to do with the moon. Right. But do I completely understand it? No. And I never will. I just look at my app and it tells me when it's good to go fishing. Mm-hmm. So we're okay with not understanding things ourselves. But when I think the problem is that there has been a fight that's happened between the religious community and the science community, and it's been going on for hundreds and hundreds of years. You look at guys like Galileo or, Da Vinci, and these guys that were living in sort of both worlds, and at times became, treasonous, and the church would hate them, or science would hate them. And these ideas, it's this fight that's sort of come from, I think, both sides not being very open-minded. Historically, religion is based in emotion. I mean, it's just historically the way it is, you know, whereas historically science is based in facts. But honestly, if you break it down, I think science takes just as much faith.
Well, and why?
Well, I mean, because we always, how often have think like in my own lifetime, eggs have gone from being super healthy to super unhealthy to the whites are healthy and the yellows are not healthy, and then and everything in between. And science changes, and it's not that science changes; it's that our understanding grows, and so we learn something, and so it's not that. What you know, and science has that the positive for them is that they can go, well, yes, what we said to you before was wrong, but it's because we didn't understand this, and now we understand this, and so that's no longer the fact. This is the fact, and so science takes faith because you're still believing in some things you can't necessarily see at times, you know, and you're also believing that this is true, even though a day from now, a month from now, 100 years from now, it could be proven completely false, because our knowledge grows. And so there is still faith, meaning believing in something, even though you don't know for sure. You know, and that comes down to even, you know, if you start looking at the idea of like the cosmos and how big, our universe and what existence is, like the idea of light traveling, like it doesn't, you know, the rules that we have here on earth don't apply there. Like I read a thing about light, and so like if, you know, light travels at, you know, 600,000 light years, you know, or whatever, per hour or whatever, however fast it goes. If I'm driving a car towards you at 40 miles an hour and you turn and run away from me at 10 miles an hour and then turn back and look at the car will now be bearing down on you at what, 10 miles or 30 miles an hour, because you've just taken 10 miles an hour away from it.
I was told there's going to be no math on this podcast.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, so I better explain it. So you're running and the car's coming down, and the faster you go, the slower the approach that car is going to be to you. But science, and that's the way our minds work, like A plus B equals C. But when it comes to light, that's not the way it works. If I shine a light at you and you ran 100,000 miles an hour away from that light and turned back and looked at that light, it would still be coming at you at the same speed that it was when you were standing still. And I say all that to say this, is that we don't understand everything. Even the stuff that is proclaimed as fact is still requiring some faith. And it very well could be fact. I'm not saying these things aren't facts. I'm saying that it still requires faith to believe them, that it requires faith just like religion does. And there are facts that back up the emotions and the things that we know about God as well, about Jesus and about the Bible. And so I think a lot of ignoring the facts doesn't come from the Bible. It simply comes from a tradition of the church, and the tradition historically that of the church basically saying that facts don't belong anywhere near the Bible because the Bible is spiritual. And so the Bible is based in emotion, and so we want to keep facts away. Facts scare us, and I think historically that's sort of been the case, and I think that's part of where that fight has come from. You know, the word spiritual is not something that's in the Bible.
Not at all.
Yeah, it's not in there. There was no word for spiritual in Greek or Hebrew, any of that kind of stuff. It's a word that we have, that we've come up with, and it's a word that there is historic references to it, but in the Bible, it's not there. And the reason why, in the original text, it's not there. The reason why is they understood something that we forget, is that everything was spiritual. If I believe in God, and I believe that God created the heavens and the earth, and he created all the cosmos and the universes and the Milky Way galaxies and the black holes and the stars and suns. If I believe he created all of that, and I believe that he did all of those things, then I have to believe that the science that we have was also created by him. And I have to be able to understand that the idea of science can still be very spiritual. That it's not a one or the other. They don't cancel out each other. But you can be a Christian, a believer in God, a person who reads the Bible and lives for him, a person who goes to church on a regular basis, and it doesn't require you to lop off your brain. Like, you don't have to get dumb to do that. And I think that's the idea that in the science community is that, well, if I follow after God, then I'm just cutting off part of my brain. And I don't think that has to be the case at all. But biblically, it doesn't have to be the case.
Because you have to have, either way, you have to have faith. If you believe that God created all of this and us and our bodies and our ability to think and to heal, you have to have faith to do that. But on the flip side, if you believe we're just all here by some random selection or some evolution, that takes a lot of faith as well. And I wish I could find, there was some video that I saw quite some time ago. I was trying to find it before this podcast and I couldn't. But they were interviewing some scientists, and from what I could tell, at least from when I was looking up, that I couldn't find it, like half of scientists, like full on, like I'm talking laboratory scientists, claim to be religious, to go to church and to believe in God, at least half. And usually those are the ones that are looking at that, right? They're looking at both sides saying, all right, either choice is going to require a lot of faith, right? Yep. And when you really start dialing it in, it seems like a lot of these scientists are saying, oh gosh, like I'd have to be crazy to believe that all of this stuff was just completely random. Like it's almost impossible when you look at the decimals of how all this would have had to happen. It's completely random.
It really is. Yeah, I think personally in my brain, if you study it, it's easier to believe that a God created it than it just happened. But I'm not knocking somebody who believes the other thing, because I believe I serve a God who's big enough to use that other thing as well. And so, the facts that are provable, I don't think they take away from the reality of God. I believe those facts, to me, help prove his existence. When I look at the stars in the sky and I look how every little part of our body works, and there are parts of what we do in our existence that they can't explain. Like even something as simple as, like, I read an article a couple weeks ago about sleep. And they were talking to a scientist about sleep and how we have to have it or we die, but they don't really understand it. Like, they don't really understand it. They're like, what is it doing? What is it? They have theories, and some theories get talked about as fact, but they have a lot of theories. But the truth is that they don't completely understand it, just like they don't completely understand a lot of things, like our brain. They're still trying to figure that out. I mean, there's, Alzheimer's and things like that. The way our bodies react to chemotherapy, things that chemotherapy that is just horrendous and just destroys our body, yet it can still heal part of our body in the midst of something that's even worse, like cancer. And while they have some understanding of this stuff, they don't have a complete understanding. And so I believe the facts that we have help prove God a little bit more. I mean, the question for me is, can we really appreciate modern science and be a Christian? Because for so long it's been one canceling out the other one, and I think, and it might be surprising to people listening or watching, but I don't think that there has to be a battle between science and Christianity. I don't think there needs to be a battle there.
Well, because most religious people or Christians embrace science, right? Right?
Yeah, for the most part, there obviously there are zealots and people that go really far off to another side of things, and they don't. But most of them do. Yeah, most of them they understand the science of things. They go to the doctor and they put on sunscreen and they study things and they want to know things and they want to understand things. We need science. science is the practical benefits alone. When you look at like that my phone right here has more computing power than like 10 of the Apollo rockets, and that fits in my pocket. Like, that's insanity to me, but it's a practical benefit that has come from science. It helps us live well. We need science to help us know well, to understand things in a better way. Science begins to help us understand the cosmos. I mean, it really does. But my suggestion would be this: is that we also need Christianity to live well. That Christianity is all about God and Jesus, that proclaim to be the author of life. And if that's the case, then what we have to say about life, what he had to say about life, and what the Bible has to say about life, is worth listening to. And so we also need Christianity to not just live well, but I believe we need Christianity to know well. I believe we need the Bible's take on why exactly things aren't right in this world, and why things aren't exactly right with us individually. Because, science can't tell us what's wrong. There's a thing they call the human condition, and it's the idea that we're the only creatures on the planet that understand our mortality, at least on the level that we do. And in that, there's a reason why, if this is your third time listening to this podcast, there's a reason why. Probably because you have questions, you have things that you want to understand, you want to listen to. If this is your first time, I encourage you to listen to the other ones. But
and it means you're smart, because 9 out of 10 people that listen to this podcast are smart. But in all seriousness, usually
good looking too.
And very good looking.
Oh,
super
really
attractive.
Yeah.
But in all seriousness, I think when you are like, the more intellectual you are and the smarter you are, this is a big problem for you, right? Not to say that this is easy or dumb, but I mean, a lot of people who are thinkers and like they want answers and they're constantly trying to solve for things. This is a big struggle. Like a lot of really smart scientists.
With a lot of scientists, but like I said, there are those questions that aren't answered through science. What's wrong with the world? What's wrong with us? Like why why am I hurting? Why is this happening? Why do I feel horrible no matter what happens? Why am I depressed, or why am I anxious? Why, what's wrong with this world? And science tries to attempt to answer some things that are wrong with the world. Look at things like climate change and stuff, and they make their deductions and find their proofs and their facts, and they make those choices. But science generally isn't, delving. We always equate like the things in our, that's wrong in our heads and in our emotions to, well, that we have to deal with mental health there. But science isn't really delving into that a ton. But here's the thing: we need good science and we need good Christian thinking. I think we need both of these things. Science depends on being open-minded, or it's supposed to. Science is supposed to depend on being open-minded in order to do its investigation. It's supposed to walk in and say, anything's possible. Let's find the proof. And that's the whole idea of it. And many times I think science is closed-minded on stuff when it comes to the idea of God.
Why do you think that is?
Because they can't prove it. Even though those proofs that they do have may change, they're okay with that because they found the proof for the moment. And the faith that is required to believe in God is much more. It's not something that you're ever going to be able to find that proof for, not here on earth. It's just not something you can do. And so I think that makes it hard. And in the same way, I think religion is massively closed-minded towards science, but it's a two-way street that both of us need to be walking down. Like, for example, the assumption, like you talked about earlier, like with evolution, the assumption that over time, by random chance, all these things came into being, the Big Bang and then evolution, and out of the water came things that were walking and eventually talking, and, making iPhones, like that was the progression. But if you walk in to the discussion of God automatically going, well, there can't be a God, and so I have to find another answer for the reason we are here, it's starting off with loaded dice. Like you're never going to find the answer in God if you start off with the assumption that there is no God. It's closed-minded, and science can sometimes be that way, and Christianity can be that way too. We need good Christian thinking. Christianity depends on us saying what the Bible says and what the Bible tells us. Like, that's what Christianity should be. That's what being a follower of God should be. What does the Bible tell us? But so often we don't do that. So often we add our own Christianese, our own language to it, our own ideas, our own traditions and theories. The example being existence, the idea that we exist, that the world exists, that the world came into being. The Bible does speak about existence, but it doesn't really explain the particulars. Like the Bible, it gives the when. It never gives the when or the how. The Bible is a lot more interested in giving the why, giving the so what. So so this happened. So what was next? Like the heart behind it. And as a Christian, I should never be saying something that the Bible doesn't say. And I also need to appreciate as a Christian that the Bible is not a scientific book.
It's not a modern age textbook.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's not what it is. It's not what it was meant to be. What I have to understand as a Christian, and what I think science needs to understand as well, is that the Bible isn't a textbook, and that there are some things that the Bible is silent about. There's some things the Bible does not explain and does not talk about, and that's just the way there is. If you look, there's a quote. There's an author, C.S. Lewis. He wrote Chronicles of Narnia and a bunch of other stuff, and he was a lecturer for Oxford and stuff like that, and a writer. And he put it this way. He put, in science, we see the notes to a poem, and in Christianity, we have the poem itself. And to better explain that,
say that again.
In science, we see the notes to a poem. In Christianity, we have the poem itself. To explain it like this, there are a lot of poems about love, right? But those poems don't explain the synapses that are firing in your brain when you're attracted to somebody and when you fall in love. They don't explain what is happening in your head and in your heart. They're poems about love. And so I believe that the Bible is a poem about what God created, the earth, the heavens, us. It's not going to give all the details. It's not. Science is the notes. It's the details behind the poem. I believe they go hand in hand. I don't think that it's a fight. I think it should be joined together. They should work together. But it's not the way we've created it in the Christian world. We've created it in the Christian world as this fight. It's always a us or them, or if you believe that, you're dumb. If you believe that, you're cold-hearted. Those are the two sides arguments all the time, and it breaks my heart because I hate that I don't want anybody to think I'm dumb because I believe in God, but I also don't want a Christian to look at me and go, well, you really don't believe in God because you believe in some science. It doesn't make any sense. God created the science. He created the person that came up with the proof for that science. That's what I believe. And so, it's like watching those documentaries. Do you like watching documentaries?
Depends on the documentary. I know where you're going with this.
Yeah.
Being in just one, most of them are not very fair and balanced.
No, they're not. I mean, I love documentaries, but they're one-sided. Like, even the ones that are fair and balanced still don't tell the whole story. They can't. It's a video and it's trying to tell a big giant story inside of an hour and 30 minutes. Like, it'll never tell the whole story. And but so often, I mean, we live in a world, and you and I both know this, where people watch a documentary, and just because they watch the documentary, they take it as gospel. It is true. What is said is the truth. And don't you tell me anything different or you're dumb. Like, it's the attitude. But it's just not the truth. I mean, we don't know everything. How could we? Even any scientist would tell you they don't know everything. That most scientists would tell you that. I believe most scientists would probably tell you that the amount of knowledge they have compared to what the world is smaller now than what they would have told you 15 years ago. Because the more they know, the more they understand that they don't know. It's understanding that there's other sides to this thing. And I saw an example of this, or an illustration of this once, and it was a guy who drew a circle, and he asked the scientist. He said, "Now I want you to picture that this circle is 100% of the knowledge. It is all of the knowledge that ever could be or ever will be on this planet. Like, it is everything." And he said, now he asked the scientist to shade in, to color in the amount of knowledge that scientist thought he had in comparison to all knowledge. And he shaded in just a little sliver. What I think we need to understand is that little sliver is very important to us as Christians. That science is important because it helps explain God. Say explain God, but it helps prove him, I believe. But the other side of that is that science needs to understand that if it's just a sliver and you have this big circle and just one little sliver that is the knowledge that you have, God has room in all that other knowledge that you don't know of to do things, and it doesn't, saying God is real doesn't disprove your theories. It just might mean that God did that theory, that he might have done that thing that you say proves there is no God. Well, because no, God's big. And I believe God created all the cosmos and all the heavens and everything. He's big enough to do this thing that you say prove him wrong. And so, I mean, we don't know everything, and we never will. And there'll be findings from science forever that the Bible is silent about. I mean, it's just the way it's going to be. And there are also things about life that the Bible talks about that science will never be able to explain or talk about. And so I don't think we're wasting our time or anything when it comes to science, when we ask questions like when or how. But in the same way, I don't think we're wasting our time when we read the Bible and we ask who put this all together and why.
Man, good stuff. So I have a couple questions that
Sure.
we would be crazy not to ask, and this is stuff that I don't have an answer to, and I'm hoping Pastor Johnny will. And when I was doing just a little research before this, I was Googling all kinds of funny stuff. And, one of the images that came up was a picture of Adam and Eve with like a dinosaur peeking behind them. And I think a lot of people, because we know there were dinosaurs, right? I mean,
Yeah.
we're finding fossils and bones. We know there were
I saw
dinosaurs.
Jurassic World.
Oh yeah, baby. And yet we have the Bible in the book of Genesis that talks about this Adam and Eve, and we don't really know the time, or do we? And then all of a sudden you have dinosaurs and cavemen, and like, where does all this stuff fit in? And I think this is a struggle for a lot of people, including me, on like, I don't know how to answer that to my kids, right? Let's change the subject. So like, what's the answer to the stuff like that?
Well, and I'm not going to pretend to be an expert on all this stuff, so bear with me. But we don't know the times. We don't know how long The Bible says that a year is like a day is like 1,000 years to God, and 1,000 years is like a day, meaning that time doesn't really exist on his playing field. So do we know the timeline for things? We don't. We can, if we want to take a really linear look at things, a lot of theologians will try and say, well, the earth is 10,000 years old or 15,000 years. They don't know. They're guessing. The Bible doesn't tell us. And
we kind of made up time as people, right? I mean, right? I mean,
yeah, that's our invention,
right?
I mean, God created day and night, and and the earth rotating and stuff like that. But as far as like keeping track of that kind of stuff, and God never, it wasn't part of the plan. It wasn't. I'm not saying it's wrong for us to do it. It's just not something that we ever have any record of. We don't know. I mean, maybe Adam and Eve walked on this earth for 1,000,000 years. I mean, he's God, and he created people. Maybe that's what it was. I don't know. I do believe when it comes to like the idea of evolution, we have a lot of proof for microevolution. We don't have a whole lot of proof for macroevolution, meaning like changing of species, that kind of a thing. There's not a lot of that is still, it's the theory of evolution still. It's still a theory. But in the end, it comes down to, do I want to be the Christian that is fighting to prove that evolution is wrong, or do I want to be the one that's fighting to show people in the world that God loves them? And I think a lot of it comes down to, for me at least, is what's more important. I do want us to have an understanding of what's happening in the world, but when it comes down to evolution or dinosaurs, of course there were dinosaurs. I mean, we have bones, we have things like that. Do I know when they existed? No. Because that's once again, it's unfair to ask science to answer a question that it can't answer. Like, is there a God? Or what's life all about? But it's also unfair, I think, to ask the Bible or Christians to speak about things that the Bible just doesn't speak about. And those are questions that are left better to science and better to understanding of timelines and things of that nature. And I believe the knowledge that those scientists have came from God as well. Like, he's the one who creates the ideas in our brains. He created their brain to think that way. In the same way that your wife or my wife's a doctor too. And the idea of like, he created her brain that smart, and to do those kind of things and to learn those things and to be able to help fix people and things of that nature. But the Bible is silent on a lot of those kind of things. And to me, like I said earlier, as a real Christian shouldn't be fighting for something the Bible is silent about. It's just wasted time. My goal is to talk about what the Bible talks about. I believe God created the heavens and the earth. Do I know how he did it and when he did it? No, he's God. I mean, he spoke and matter appeared. That's what I believe. And you might think I'm nuts for thinking that, and that's okay. But the truth is that is an infinitesimal, smallest part of the Bible. The vast majority of the Bible is about how God loves you, and he loves you right where you are and how you are. And so for me, I'm interested in this stuff and understanding it, but I want Christians to understand that that's a minor thing, and we shouldn't be majoring on the minor things. And in the same way, I want people that are wondering or questioning this idea to understand that I'm not telling you you're wrong if you believe in science. I'm telling you the Bible doesn't tell me all the answers. And so that's going to be left to the scientists, and God can make that work and fit into his plan however he does. And I know that was a really long non-answer, but I hope that helped understand what I believe and what I think we should be doing as Christians.
I think it's a great answer. I mean, I struggle with the same thing when some of my friends who knew me well in my 20s, when I was not going to church and not living a very good Christian lifestyle, And that was also at my lowest low when I was drinking way too much. I was quite the binge drinker. I was really good at it, actually. And I was also suffering from, daily anxiety attacks, that was small in comparison to my main issue, which was just feeling like I had no purpose, right? That why am I here? And for quite some time, I kind of blamed God. I never really hated him. I know I never like hated him, but I kind of just like blamed him and kind of was like mad at everything. And I was working hard to kind of discredit a lot of the stuff we talked about. And then the cancer came when I was 28. And that was like one of those eye-opening moments where I said, you know what, maybe it's time to look at this. And when something like that happens, you start wishing you were around a good group of Christian people or people who would pray over you and would have faith that you're going to be healed. And that changed a lot for me. And now what I was trying to get at here is when I tell people like why, all I've seen in my personal life is that everything in all aspects of my life, including me finding my own purpose, like I wake up with an exact purpose. I know why I'm put on this earth. And it slightly changes every week or every month, but I have a pretty doggone a good idea. And it's doing stuff like this. I feel like I finally feel like I found my calling. I mean, even things financially, my marriage, all this stuff has been better once I accepted God and Jesus Christ back into my life after ignoring him for many, many years. It's tough to explain that. Science can't just like the love and infatuation. Like, yeah, you can kind of talk about some things that are going on in your head and neurons tap, but end of the day, it's really tough to explain that. And it's tough to explain even the power of tithing, right? About how stuff like every time I give back, whether it's church or just to someone who needs it or a homeless person or kids with cancer or my time, I feel like I'm blessed with more stuff. Science can't explain it. No one can explain that, but I see it happening in my life time and time and time again. And where I'm getting at, and a big reason I want to keep doing these type of podcasts is I've seen the transformation in my own life just by accepting it and having just blind faith that there is a God and that Jesus did exist for us. And that we're all broken people just trying to become better versions of ourselves every day. And ever since I've accepted that in my life and spent more time exploring these questions and talking to people like you and going to church and just asking questions and asking people to pray over me, my life has become better. And I've seen that happen with many other people. And I know, once again, at my lowest low was when I had church and God completely out of my life and out of my mind. And that's all I can say. I mean, that's the proof I have. And once again, science can't explain it. I can't really put it on a chart. It's tough. It's tough to explain.
Yeah, and I think it just comes down to whether or not it comes down to faith again. You know, I think part of the reason Christians fight so hard against the idea of science or evolution or things of that nature is because we're Christians and we've already had to put out all this faith to believe in God, and we grasp at anything to make sure that stays held true, as opposed to still letting faith happen. The faith that God, Romans says, the depths and wonders of God, I'll never understand you. Like I'll never understand all these things. I'm just not going to. And I'm okay with that. And that's a hard jump for some people to make. It's a hard jump because it's just understanding that, that science and Christianity can work together. They can do all this stuff. And when we understand that, whenever I am settled in my heart that science is okay and it's good, and I serve a God that I love completely and that loves me completely, and that I can be both of those things at the same time. And when I do that, then all of a sudden I become a person that can approach God and say, you created all this. Like, can you help explain life to me? Like, can you help me understand better the things that are really important to me? Because it's amazing to me how many times Christian or science fight so hard against each other for something that doesn't really mean anything to them. If you're a Christian and you've ever gotten in like a Facebook fight with somebody over evolution, it's the dumbest thing on the planet, because who cares? Like, all right, even if you convinced that person of something different in the end, like you just wasted all of this energy not sharing God's love, not doing things that actually make you a better person, that affect you, and instead you've been focusing on this other side of things. And so science is super important. The Bible doesn't explain all of it. It's not meant to. I'm never going to understand it all. But uh, the fact that I believe in Jesus does not mean that I don't believe in science, and vice versa. I'm a fairly smart cat. Like I try to learn things. I have knowledge, and I try to read.
I own a bookshelf. Okay.
Yeah. You own a book. I do too. It's full of kids' books right now, but it's one of those things where it's, I'm not dumb. And I'm okay with not having all the answers, and I'm okay with an answer that science gives making me have to think a little harder about God. I'm okay with that. God's okay with that. He's God. He can handle the challenge. But in the end, like, I believe he's the Almighty. He's the creator. I believe he takes care of us. And I believe if evolution, the theory of evolution is actually the truth, then I believe I serve a God who used evolution. I mean, that's just, and I'm not saying I believe or don't believe that. I'm saying that God's big enough to do that. Quit putting him in a box and saying, well, no, that can't be true because God is this. No, God is God. And he created the planet and he created the world. He's bigger than you. He's bigger than your brain and your thoughts. And in the same way, science is much bigger than your brain or your thoughts. It's huge. And you're never going to have all that knowledge. And so on both sides, we don't understand everything. We don't know everything. We're learning more every day and we're growing. So let's quit fighting. Can't we all just get along?
I had a quote down from Einstein. He was the one that said, "Science without religion is lame, and religion without science is blind."
That's so good.
Yeah, Einstein of all people.
Yeah.
You touched on something there that helped me out a lot too when I was going down that path of just not necessarily. I was certainly not atheist. I still prayed. I wasn't attending church. I still believed. I still call myself a Christian. I just wasn't living a Christian lifestyle, and I think that bothers a lot of people. We talked about that last week, right? I mean, so many people they basically judge Christians by some of the people in the church or some of like the negative things that news portrays, one bad pastor that has done something bad. We're all sinners, right? Instead of looking at the author, of the founder of all this, right? I mean, people just tend to judge the people, and we're all broken people.
Yeah.
We all need help. But the thing that got me through it was, you touched on it about God and like purpose. And if we're here just randomly, like if we truly believe it's random, that you are watching or listening to this right now, that everything is random, there's no purpose, no meaning to nothing, that's hopeless to me. That gives me zero hope. Like, why should we care about anything? Right? But if you do believe that you're here for even just a slight purpose, that you serve a purpose on this earth, boom, when I started believing that and had faith in that, everything changed for me, including figuring out what my purpose and my mission on life was. Right? Does that make sense?
It makes complete sense. Yeah. I mean, we all, once again, it goes back to the human condition, that I talked about earlier. We all want to have meaning. We all need, we have a human condition is an understanding of our mortality and understanding that there is something more, that we want something more. And it's not something that science is going to answer for you. It's just in the same way that the Bible doesn't tell me, how the moon or stars were created, other than God spoke and they appeared. Other than that, like, I don't know how. I don't know the how and the but I understand the why. At least I have a good understanding of the why. I'm growing in that. But the why is God wanted love, and he wanted to love people, and he wanted them to love him too. And And so it goes both directions, and the fight is almost crazy to me because you need both of those things. They work so beautifully together, that it is a great thing. I won't understand all this stuff, but I'm going to keep trying to, and just keep trying to major on the major things that people finding their purpose, somebody finding their purpose and finding the place that's better for them, and finding a place in their heart and in their life that makes them happy and brings them joy. That's so much more important than whether evolution happened this way or this way. Like, so much more important.
Yes.
And so that really comes down to how I look at it personally as a pastor and as a Christian.
I love it, man. I love it. And speaking of love, I mean, that's really what it boils down to, right? I mean, loving, and Luke and I talked about this offline before, and even just some of the feedback, we get from doing podcasts like this and talking about our faith in business. And we never try to ram anything down people's throat. We just like to do things like this, tell the truth, talk about the questions that we have. But I've yet to find anyone, regardless of religion, whether you're Christian or Muslim, Hindu, Buddha, whatever, that doesn't agree the world would be a better place if we all just love more and follow the 10 commandments. Those two things, right? You can't argue that. Forget everything else in the Bible. If you just looked at the 10 commandments and loved more, loved your neighbor more, just like you want to be loved yourself, would the world be a better place? Yes. And that's a great starting point. And right, that's what you touched on with all the Facebook hatred and really just hatred in general with politics and all this stuff and having to be right. Man, life is too short for that. That's why I've deleted the news complete. There is zero news. That whole news icon is gone, deleted. I have zero news. I do look at Facebook and have an idea of some things going on, but I don't have time for it in my life. I don't look at any of the politics stuff. I don't even care. I'll still vote, but I don't care about any of their stuff. Life's too short. I know I have a bigger purpose here, and I'm here to make an impact. And looking at all that stuff and arguing about it does not help. I want to love more, and I want to follow the 10 commandments, right? I mean, just plain and simple. If those two things, I mean, we all did that, this world would be a better place.
Well, you're doing what your purpose was, and there are scientists that are going to be doing what their purpose was, which was to help us understand some of this stuff and to help create iPhones and things. They like to understand this stuff, and so everybody has their purpose. They have their place. And so, I think the best thing in the world is just to, we all want to be better people. Is fighting between science and religion making us better people? It never will.
Correct. Yep. Awesome, dude. This has been a good one. Here's the deal, guys. A big part of why we're doing this is to inspire, to help answer questions that I think we're all struggling with. And we are not a church. I am not. Johnny is. But Salt Strong is not. We're not asking for tithes or anything. All we ask is that you share this. That is all we ask. Like, that's how we want to get paid, is to obviously subscribe, leave us reviews, and then share this with people that you think might want to hear this message and maybe need to hear it in their lives right now or struggling with this. And then finally, ask questions. We would love to hear from you. We put all these podcasts on saltstrong.com, and at the very bottom, you'll see a comment area. We read every single one of those. So please, please, please leave comments. Let us know what you want us to discuss next. Let us know some of the issues, the struggles with faith or God or just life in general and meaning and purpose. We have a lot of big ideas, but we want to hear from you. We want to cover what you're interested in. And then finally is to, and this is a tough one. I've struggled with how I want to end these podcasts, because what I don't want to say is just go to church, because I've been let down and kind of disappointed by when someone just says go to church, especially if you go to maybe the wrong one or one that you feel, you know what I'm saying? And you're a pastor, but it happens. So, but I would say go to some type of church and don't be afraid to try different ones, and maybe even start in like a small group, or maybe you have a friend who is a Christian you look up to and like, man, this guy's usually, or girl is usually really happy. Maybe I'll just go out and have a beer with them or coffee. Like, start off small. You don't have to go all in. I would not recommend pardon what I'm about to say here, Johnny, but I would not recommend like going to a church and the first day sign up for every small group and you want to be a helper. Like, to me, you're going to end up disappointed. Like, start off a little small, just get in and make sure you're in the right place. Do you agree with that as a pastor?
I completely agree. I completely agree with that. Unless it's at my church, then just dive in. No, I completely agree. Give it a shot, and if you go to one and it sucks, then don't think that church sucks. That church might.
That's what I was trying to say. You said it more eloquently.
I don't know eloquently, but I mean, that church might suck, but there are lots of good churches. There really are. I'll help point you in the right direction if you can tell me where you live, and I can. I know pastors all over the country, and I may be able to help point you in the right direction. But even beyond that, it's just understand that the church it's people, and so some of them are going to fit you well, and some aren't. In the same way that friends and people fit you well, and some don't, and so you got to understand that first, and then secondly, understand that not all of them are going to be the right fit, and so you might go to one and go, you know what, this doesn't feel right. I need to try a different. Then try a different one. Don't give it one shot and then be like, nope, I'm done. But I would say try and find something, or find like Joe said, finding a lot of churches have like small groups that meet and you probably, the chances are you may know somebody that's a part of one, and you can, it might be at their house or something, and you go and you have dinner once a week and sit around with just 4 or 5 people and have a discussion. Maybe that's more comfortable for you. Some people are more comfortable like blending into a big crowd, and some people are more comfortable in a small group. So I would encourage you to try and find a place like that. Find some place that you can give a shot and say, hey, you know what? I think this is a place I could call home. Yep. Find a place where I find my purpose.
Especially when bad things happen, which is going to be a future podcast about, why bad things happen to good people. But with going through cancer and anxiety attacks and some struggles with alcohol and even just relationships, right? Trying to be a good husband and a good dad, stuff that many of us struggle with sometimes daily. It helps to have a group of men or women or a small group that has your back, that will pray for you, that will not judge you. And I found that by going through church and church groups and my C12 group that I've brought up a couple times. And it's changed my life. It's a foundation of my life. And looking back now, I was like, well, no wonder I was miserable and kind of depressed and dealing with all this just really low lows in my late 20s. I didn't have any of that. I didn't have any kind of foundation. So I would urge you to do it and keep listening to this if you're just not ready. And when you are, boom, the right time happens. Awesome. We'll be praying for you. And if we can pray for you, I know Johnny, especially because you have a massive church group there, and they would love to talk to you, pray for you, however you can. So how do they reach you and find you?
You can email me at Johnny, JOHNNY at discoverfamilychurch.com. I pastor Discover Family Church in Lakeland.
Polk County,
Lakeland, Florida, right off I-4, real easy to get to. And so we meet on Sundays at 10 a.m. You can email me anytime. I'd love to help, or if you just go to our website, my email's on there as well. And so
cool.
Love to answer any questions I could.
This has been helpful, brother. Thank you all so much for all the support, all the love. And once again, hit us up, shoot us questions. We want to keep doing these for as long as you guys want to keep listening and watching. So let us know what topic's next. Pasta.
Peace. Love you guys.
Yeah, man.